Organic dairy, a success story for the sector, is facing a crisis, with fears growing over whether people are going to keep buying organic milk, butter, cheese, and other dairy products as food prices rise. On-farm expenses have started to spiral out of control, and organic feed prices have more than tripled thanks to rising shipping costs dating back to the chaos wreaked by the pandemic. Here's the latest news we have for you on concerns over these soaring prices. The current state of the dairy farming sector. The dairy farming sector has shown little to no growth in sales over the past couple of years, and the overall sales of organic dairy products has been much smaller than a few years ago. According to retailers, organic milk and dairy products aren't in as much demand, especially when they are placed in supermarket rows lined with new commitments and standards that are perpetually being rolled out by conventional milk brands. They're also having to compete with alternative milks like oat milk, soy milk, and almond milk. People are suddenly a lot more health conscious. Regarding these stats, it's not much of a surprise to see producers starting to ditch their organic status and moving to claim prices equal or at least close to those being claimed by conventional farmers. What people in the industry have to say. According to Tim Downs, an organic dairy farmer in Shropshire, the difference between milk prices and feed costs has become untenable. He went on to predict that people who buy organic milk are going to be running out of the beverage soon enough because more and more farmers are starting to either switch to conventional dairy farming or are simply just producing less. David Williams, the chief executive of the Organic Milk Suppliers Cooperative, has talked about the need for organic to be at least 10 pence per liter more, as compared to milk produced by cows reared in conventional farming systems. But the main challenge here is convincing people to pick it off the supermarket shelf. How do you force the buyer's hand? What once made organic farmers stand out is now being adopted by the dairy sector as a whole. The point of difference doesn't exist anymore. So what initiative do buyers have left to buy their products anyway? Another implication is going to be a decline in the use of artificial fertilizer, an essential part of organic farming standards by all kinds of dairy farmers. We have the rising costs to thank for that, too. According to an industry insider, one might question the significance of selling organic at this point. As food prices soar, consumers are driven to keep their expenses down to whatever they're able to pay. It doesn't make sense for them to fork out extra for organic stuff. Williams has a cooperative that represents about 2/3 of milk produced by organic farmers in the UK. According to him, organic selling point used to be its farmers' efforts to protect and conserve wildlife and the environment. Their standards were not using artificial fertilizer or antibiotics. They were certified, and their farms were audited annually to ensure compliance. All in all, a pretty efficient system. However, Williams also adds that he recognizes that organic brands need to up their game, especially when selling their credentials. Organic stuff is starting to look too much like conventional stuff, so how can anyone be surprised that consumers are going for cheaper options? There needs to be something to make the products stand out as products people want to buy, things they prefer, despite the extra money they have to pay for it. Farming director at the Soil Association, Liz Bowles, says that to make long-term changes, organic farmers need to reduce their dependence on imported feed and shift to homegrown proteins like peas, beans, grass, and forage. Consumer concerns. In Canada, when the Canadian Dairy Commission announced a historic 8.4% increase in the farm gate price of milk, the chief executive of the Montreal cheesemaking company Saputo Inc. declared that for whatever increase there would be on the raw material, it would be passed onto the market. Under supply management rules, the commission can establish the price that farmers get from their raw goods, but not the price at retail. Since then, Canadian consumers have been wondering how much the farm-level increase will end up costing them when they hit the grocery stores now. Saputo's announcement appears to have confirmed the consumers' fears. Farm price increases are going to keep spiraling through the supply chain until they hit consumers. But is it really as bad as it's being made out to be? Let's delve into that a little bit. Misplaced fear? Economists and scholars have argued that the scenario is not going to be as bad as people are expecting it to be. They say that the relationship between farm prices and supermarket prices is kind of messy, to say the least, and a dump on one end doesn't necessarily mean an equally big bump on the other end. It's not exactly a linear relationship. Farm prices are but a small piece of the final cost of a retail product. So something as simple as a supermarket sale on milk would end up absorbing any extra costs the consumer would feel from a farm gate increase on raw milk. According to the Director of Corporate Services at the Canadian Dairy Commission, the decision would definitely lead to a price hike for consumers, but added that the magnitude of this increase is really going to depend on what's going to happen down the supply chain. Historical records say yes. If history is anything to go by, only a quarter of the percentage increase at the farm level ends up finding its way into retail. An 8.4% increase for farmers, therefore, would increase increased checkout prices by 2%. There are other pressures in the supply chain that drive up costs, including transportation fuel costs and labor shortages at processing plants. It is all primarily dependent on the weight of the milk in the overall retail product. Then you're going to add on labor, transport, packaging, and all that other stuff. So yeah, it's a little misleading to think that 8% at the farm level is going to trigger some sort of chaotic increase in percent terms at the retail level. Historically, dairy prices have never risen at the same rate as overall food inflation. In just the past decade, overall food prices have risen 3 times more than dairy product prices on a percentage basis. Even this year, food prices are on the rise because of supply chain complications and droughts in a large part of Western North America. So yeah, we expect the prices of meat, grain products, pasta, and bread to go up. But then again, let's keep in mind that none of those products have organizations that announce their price increases. Milk is the outlier in this case. Water shortages. Soaring global commodity prices aren't the only concern for dairy farmers. Last year, California announced new restrictions on water use in areas of the state dominated by the agricultural sector. These restrictions were predicted to become more and more routine as climate change makes droughts and heat waves more frequent and a lot more severe. Water has become tougher for farmers in these areas to get. Water access and energy costs are going up, and farmers who live day to day are under some real stress. They lament what they see as the imposition of restrictive rules surrounding water access that make their livelihood a lot more difficult, especially for smaller farms. When you pass through the state's Central Valley, you're going to come across scores of signs reading slogans like "End this man-made drought, build more dam storage." The regulatory environment may be trying to do its part for the environment, but at what cost? Others who support the regulatory changes argue that the dairy industry already consumes a large portion of California's water, which results in harsh consequences for others. They state that the farmers' argument is a red herring because they are already the most significant water users in the state. Dairy farms consume enormous amounts of water because you need it for the cattle as well as for the feed you need to grow. It's all just way too water intensive. High feed prices. It's like there's no end in sight for the dairy farmers' troubles. On top of everything else, they are also having to deal with rising feed prices. Because of the drought, local producers have decided to cut back on the supply of goods like silage and hay, which are used to feed the livestock. Additionally, there's a huge demand from dairy farms that have expanded milk production due to high milk prices and big government subsidies. Another factor contributing to the high price of feed is the global nature of the supply chains that produce dairy products. For example, back in 2018 and 2019, African swine fever cut China's swine herds in half. In an effort to build back, demand from China for feed products surged and contributed to higher prices for American farmers. The dairy industry has been consolidating for years. It's not just feeding cows and shoveling dung, it's an economically challenging business. The added uncertainty about the future has started to become a barrier for many, especially those in the younger generation. So, if you're a young person interested in the industry, maybe find something else you're good at. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Do you think these farmers are blowing things out of proportion? Or do you think they're right to be worried? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. See you next time. Bye.